Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Let's Talk HR podcast with myself, Jack Nolan, and my special guest today, Rob Paul, our special HR professional, in my opinion. So today we're going to be talking about everything HR related and mental health orientated too. So we're going to jump straight into the deep end and ask Rob, what does HR mean to you?
Thanks, Jack. My HR kind of means to me is ultimately about helping people. It's kind of why I got into it. So I was in retail for a long time as a kind of a manager, and I realised that actually it was the people bit of retail that I liked. It was kind of helping people either get a job or kind of progress their career, or just helping them was ultimately the kind of the bottom line. So kind of looked into HR 5 years ago now, and kind of started by doing my CIPD level 5, and just kind of self-funded it. Really wanted to kind of change my career, give myself a better work-life balance, and then just kind of completed my course, passed, obviously got my qualification. And then my kind of first HR role was working for the National Crime Agency, which was really interesting. Really kind of grateful to get that opportunity. Is obviously not something that many people get to do, to work for kind of the British version of the the FBI. So to kind of work somewhere that interesting as my first HR job was even more special. And right from then it just kind of ignited that that kind of passion for helping people, kind of hearing people be thankful for kind of helping you with getting their job, putting them through screening, or kind of interviewing them and just meeting different people and different experiences and kind of helping them through it.
That's amazing, Rob. I can see you've been on quite the journey there from working in let's say confidential environments where it's all like the Wild West of crime and stuff. So that sounds really exciting what you've been through there. So again, what inspired and influenced you to work within HR? I know you've touched on it a little bit of what it means to you, but what was that key moment in your life where you thought, right, that's it, I'm going to be in the HR career path?
Yeah, and I think it was it kind of, like I kind of touched on it. It kind of came from working in retail, kind of working with people and kind of understanding their needs and kind of to the point where in retail your kind of experiences with HR are very varied. You tend to, as a manager in retail, kind of be involved in a bit of everything. You're in sales, you're in kind of people, you're everything ultimately in retail. And then it was kind of that people bit really pulled out of giving someone a job just before Christmas and helping them have a bit more money to spend on their grandkids, or helping that person go from a supervisor to a manager themselves, and really kind of that development piece. It all pulled out as, okay, I need to look into this a bit more as a career path. And like once I started looking into it, realizing that the CIPD was kind of the route to go down, to kind of do my qualification, what I would need to do that, and that it was an actual kind of career option, was really kind of really drove me to kind of look into it and just given a bit more fulfillment in terms of kind of career. Working in retail, you kind of see seasons come and go, and it's Easter and then it's Christmas, and then it's you're always into something. Whereas with people, obviously it's kind of different every day, isn't it? So it was just having that a bit more kind of career fulfillment as well.
That sounds great, Rob. Like, it must be amazing for you to sit where you are today and watch that people development and that knock-on effect that you've had on the people's lives that you've had within your employment and your career progression. To see people, like you said, go from supervisor to manager, or go from an entry-level job to high up the hierarchy within the business that you're involved in. It must be really fulfilling to see that you've got a lot of value and meaning to each person that you touch, essentially in the workforce. You know what I mean? That you can guide them, even mentoring, if that's the right word to say. That you're like steering their path forward, but they're putting in the work. You're saying, right, if you do this and this, and if you do that and you do this, and you spin that round, and you do, like architecting their careers for them and helping guide them to move forward. It's special, that, Rob. Honestly, that's really good.
And it's exactly kind of how I set out, if you like. So I kind of I did every level of job at kind of retail level. So like you say, when I was mentoring, when I was kind of helping these people, I could say, well, I've been there, I've done that. You know, any other challenges they had, I could kind of be like, well, I did this in this situation, and therefore this is kind of what you could do, or, you know, have you got an idea of what you could do differently? And it's kind of the same in HR. So I've been in HR roles since 2018, so kind of passed my CIPD in 2017, kind of moved into role 2018, and since then I've been kind of, you know, been HR assistant, admin, officer. I'm now an advisor. I'm kind of trying to move up that path so that kind of when I get to, you know, nearer the top, I can kind of be like, well, actually, I've done your role, or you know, and kind of help people again that way, because it kind of worked so well when I was in retail.
That's brilliant, Rob. And there's nothing better than saying, I've been there in your shoes. I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like. I know what the experience is going on. This is how I dealt with that situation. This is what I've done to move forward. And you can be like me one day, you know what I mean? Or whatever position you're at, you can inspire that next generation of HR leaders, essentially, you know, in terms of how great they could be for the work that you've done. It's really, you know, it's an inspiring tale to tell, isn't it? To be able to say, this is how far I've got. You can be better than me. You know what I mean? You can see that potential in them. You can say, you know, not you put your, you know, I think a lot of people in the HR that I've spoke to, you know, so far, they've got no ego, and that's one of the key traits of being a good HR leader, in my opinion. That you put your ego to bed, and it's sort of you focus on the other person, and you see how you can help that person develop, grow, and expand themselves within the environment that they're in. So that's really top, that, Rob, honestly.
And that was kind of so again, just to kind of mirror my own experiences. I took that approach when I was in kind of retail, because I had the opposite experience in terms of the managers ahead of me were like not nurturing, not kind of encouraging, tried to hold me back based on that kind of, that they were old school. They didn't kind of see that, you know, didn't want someone young coming through at the time. And I was like, well, actually, like you say, when I got to that position, I was like, no, I'm going to do it the opposite way.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about someone kind of coming behind to quote unquote take my job. It's about kind of setting them up to kind of be the next person, is it? Because you're not always going to be there. And yeah, so it kind of was based off my own experiences, kind of how I've approached it.
Yeah, because it's like you've seen bad leadership, and you think, I'm going to be better than that when I get in that power, you know, position of power or influence to be able to help people. Because you've got to push each other up. Like, you help somebody climb up the ladder, and then say, for example, you're changing careers or something happens, and you've got that solid relationship with that person. They can then help give you a little boost up to get back onto the next peg. And it's like, you know, climbing like the monkey bars, isn't it? You got to just keep grabbing each bar, and as you're doing that, you're helping other people get across the other side. You know what I mean? So that's my little metaphor for the day for you. You can take that with you. So that's brilliant, Rob. So moving on to my next question is, why did you choose to work in your current organisation?
So for me, so I work for TLT, the solicitors, and for me it was really an opportunity that kind of stuck out, because their HR department is growing. You know, when I applied from when I applied and to now, we've increased by kind of 15. So already they were kind of operating at 30, 35 headcount in HR alone, and now it's kind of upwards of 50. So, you know, new roles are coming up all the time. I'm very ambitious, so I'm kind of I was already a HR kind of advisor level. I've come in to my current organisation as a HR advisor, but with the kind of idea that they're expanding, they're putting in more kind of business partner level roles, that I'll be involved in stuff I hadn't been involved with before, from kind of a HR point of view. So in my previous role, I was kind of very heavily involved in employee relations kind of stuff, for example, whereas here it's kind of more data analysis, it's kind of change projects, it's stuff I hadn't really been involved in before, but will ultimately kind of round out that HR advisor kind of experience, and hopefully, like I say, then set me up for kind of moving up to business partner, or kind of manager, whatever the kind of job title may be as we get there.
Sounds amazing. Honestly, like you've got that strategic head on your shoulders as well, which is very important in all elements of life, to be able to strategize where you're going to be, how you're going to get there, what you're going to do, what value you're bringing to the company, how can you show your worth, how can you help people. You've got it all, mate, honestly, and I can see that's where you stand today in that seat where you're at right now, from being that strategic, ambitious, and having that desire and the hunger to get where you want to be. You know what I mean? Because essentially in life, we're all trying to be our best version of ourselves. But if you've not got that hunger and the want to do it, then you can't do it. You know what I mean? Like you can take a horse to water, you can't make it drink, sort of thing. So, you know, you've got that about you. So, you know, you should be very proud of yourself and where you are today and where you're going. You know what I mean? So, you know, remember that you got to be, as well as looking at the future, just enjoying that present moment of where you are too. Sometimes it can go that fast, you forget where you've been and you're like, wow, that was a bit of a blur. You didn't get a chance to enjoy it because you worked so hard to get there. So congratulations for that, Rob, honestly. So another question is, moving swiftly on to, you know, how important is mental and emotional well-being of your workforce?
I would say it's obviously it's always been hugely important, but I would say it's taken on even more importance in a way since kind of everything that's happened with the pandemic, in terms of that kind of isolation piece. So, you know, we all went through the same pandemic, but we all went through it in different ways in terms of kind of how you cope with it. So, you know, I'm very lucky. I'm married. I've got a couple of kids. In terms of kind of my experience compared to maybe colleagues, compared to kind of other members of, you know, of the organisation, in terms of kind of people we support, managers, stuff like that, you know, they're feeding back that they've had obviously very different experiences in terms of, like I say, that kind of isolation piece, that, you know, the connectivity we've lost from kind of being virtual, etc. So I think there is a kind of a huge amount of lessons to learn from kind of what we've experienced. I think there's a huge amount we've obviously put in place, and I think there's still a huge amount that will come into kind of the workforce as we kind of progress, just as we kind of learn to adapt to it. Because I think there's still a percentage of the kind of the workforce that want to go back to normal, quote unquote, whatever normal was. But at the same time, will we ever go back to that? Who knows? It's about obviously kind of then putting in kind of different measures, you know, kind of replacement measures for some of those things. So, you know, something that we kind of put in, or, you know, I've been involved in kind of both my organisations, is that we do a lot of kind of Teams chats, but not just about work. So kind of putting in those, you know, tea and time to talk, almost kind of, you know, it's that kind of replicating the kind of the coffee break that you would have in the office, which I think is really important, and I would kind of advocate more people doing, because I think that, you know, you lose a bit of that, or, you know, and we do, it's the kind of, I would say we've also lost that kind of immediate feedback. So it's kind of trying to figure out how you keep that up as well. Like I've kind of touched on, I am ambitious. I am kind of eager to kind of push forward, but then I'm not going to keep pushing forward if I don't know if I'm doing a good job. So you kind of need to replicate some of that in terms of kind of getting that feedback about whether that was a good, you know, a good call, a good case, a good bit of work. That kind of stuff, I think, is still an area that people need to kind of explore from a kind of a well-being piece, because obviously it feels good to receive good feedback, doesn't it? So,
yeah,
you know, I think that's something that people still need to kind of look at, build into kind of the new way of working, or kind of the way of working, if we want to look at it that way.
Absolutely, and you mentioned some really key things there, and I'll just push on some of them. Where you said, that I'm going to focus on the two things that I've got them right in my head now, on the tip of my tongue. So the last thing you said then was, you know, getting that praise, that credit, that, you know, that pat on the back almost, in terms of, you know, your progression with the work that you've done, and that's important. You know what I mean? Because it makes us feel valued as workers. It makes us feel, you know, a part of the team. makes us feel like, yeah, we're winning, we're success, or even if we don't get the feedback that we want, we're learning. We're learning to how to move forward, and that's really essential, like thing that we should be aware of as employees or people who work within organisations to get that feedback. You know what I mean? There should be a nice flow of communication back and forward within the relationships that you have with your managers and leaders within the organisation, so you can get access to that like quickly. You know what I mean? So when you're doing that task and it's done, it can be like hot potato. You're throwing it to each other, sort of almost metaphorically speaking, of course, because that's important for the development, not just for yourself, but for the company and their needs and the value they're bringing to the marketplace, in my opinion. Another thing what you mentioned as well is that the little breakout rooms, the tea, the cup of tea moment, I think that's massive. It's funny you should say that, because I just did a LinkedIn post today talking about how we should really sort of talk to our employees and colleagues with each other from a vulnerable perspective, where it's not all business and it's all about how we are as individuals in our professional life and in our personal life, just so we can get the ball rolling there to show that we can connect and we can support each other through the challenges that we are facing. Because if we're not right as within our company as employees and professionals, then how can we move the ball forward with the business? You know what I mean? If we're not working on all cylinders, how can we do that? That's one of the things that we need to sort of address. So I think that comes down to clear communication and showing vulnerabilities with each other as leaders first. So yourself, Rob, I recommend that you probably do this. I recommend you do it with your colleagues. When you have your little tea breaks, just say, look, hey, whatever the problem you've got in your life right now, you don't have to share it personally on this, podcast. But I'm just saying, you probably got something in the back of your head what might have pinged up right now, and you thought, actually, I had an argument with the missus last night, and I didn't get to sleep because the kid was crying because the kid was unwell, and I'm a bit stressed out. And I just want to let you all know this is why I'm a bit stressed out this morning. I don't really want to speak to anyone because I'm feeling a bit introverted or whatever it may be. Having them honest conversations, can create some special bonds and help you move forward with your mental health and for the development of the business, because we're all playing from the same sandpit here. We're all on the same team. So that really encourages that team spirit of saying, yeah, you know what? I'm going through this. And it's not like comparing and competing with each other, saying, well, my problem's worse than your problem or anything like that. We're not playing top trumps. We're playing, how can we support each other? And that's a massive thing, you know what I mean? Because you might have access to information that they need, and they might have information that you need. And it's just connecting with each other, sharing that bond and experience of progression within, that special environment as a team. Because again, in my opinion, I think, when you're working, your colleagues become your family. You know what I mean? And that's why my little philosophy on that. Because, you spend a lot of your time at work, and that's where I'm sorry for rambling on. I know, I'm just quite passionate about this area of mental health and well-being, so I do ramble sometimes. So hope my listeners got a lot of value from that, and we're going to move swiftly on to the next question, because Rob has got more value to bring to the table. So Rob, what strategies have you found beneficial to support your employees' well-being and development? So I know we're on a similar topic of well-being there, but what strategies have you found useful?
So I kind of, and again, it's probably more around the development bit rather than the well-being bit. I think the development bit, it is about having that open and honest conversation. Is it kind of going, and kind of going back to kind of the retail bit, I guess, would always be kind of open to developing them. Like you say, putting the ego to one side, you'd kind of go, I will help you get to kind of where I am if that's where you want to be. And I think that's kind of the key bit is kind of, there was no point me investing my time in saying, I'm going to train you to be the next manager or, whatever their kind of next role was. If they didn't want to be there, if they kind of didn't want to get to that level, then there was no point in either of us kind of investing the time. So it all kind of boiled down to those quality kind of one-to-ones, and not even necessarily and to kind of touch on the well-being bit, it was kind of doing those good one-to-ones from a formal standpoint. So kind of the formal appraisal, this is how you're doing, where do you want to go approach. But we also did kind of strive for 5. So I used that as kind of not necessarily 5 minutes, because it was always busy and you didn't necessarily have 5 minutes. But it was kind of about knowing 5 things. So again, that, like you just kind of touched on there, the thing that's in the back of their head, kind of knowing that. So how was my person's grandkids? Were they going back to school, or what are they after for Christmas? Just the most innocuous things, but actually that's something I know about that kind of continent, my person, and that's the thing that they're going to kind of go. He's taken that extra couple of minutes to kind of know that stuff, whereas I could just run at them and go, what's your stock looking like? What's your sales looking like? Kind of push them for work stuff. But that's not kind of getting to know the person, like you say, kind of knowing what's going on behind. And yeah, from kind of a HR point of view, in terms of kind of people I've kind of supported with cases and stuff like that, it's kind of I'd always kind of and still do now, kind of turn it on them in a way, kind of put the ball in their court. What do you want to do? Obviously, they kind of know their person. I know the advice. It's about kind of, like you say, matching the two together and kind of going, can we do what you want to do in this scenario? And obviously understanding why they want to do what they want to do. And kind of, so yeah, I think to kind of bring it back to your question, in terms of strategy, it's around the talking. It's around kind of the good questioning.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Rob. Honestly, like, couldn't have said it better there. It is a communication and letting them know that they're not just a cog in a big machine. You know what I mean? We're giving them that human element, that human factor, because we all essentially need it at the end of the day. Like yourself, and you were saying that you need that like bit of praise, you need that bit of connection to see if you're doing the right thing or not. You know what I mean? And it goes a long way. It makes us feel valued. You know what I mean? And that's essentially what you want your employees to feel at the end of the day: valued, fulfilled, and excited to be at work and to be the best version they can be. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about as well in speaking about. So I'm going to cut myself off and jump into the next question, because I know time is limited. And my last question is, in your experience, what have you found creates great leadership within your teams?
That's a really good one. I think there's a number of things. When I think about some of the kind of the great leaders I've had, and the bits I've kind of taken from them, I guess, it is about that, and it's that fine balance of being a friend and being a manager. And I think there's the kind of the great leaders I've worked with over my time, they have taken that approach as I've just described there, where you know a bit about your kind of your member of staff, but also you kind of motivate them to do a good job. And I think that, yeah, kind of the kind of leadership thing that has kind of stuck with me. So there's two that have kind of stuck with me for a long time, really. And that one, the first one was to kind of be a helicopter. So you're kind of aware of the situation, but you're not in it. It was the kind of the analogy. So you're always there, you're always around, but you're not kind of in the middle of it, because that's what you're getting your staff to do. And then the other was that, and it was one we kind of put together collaboratively, was about kind of turning up for every race. So this is where it's not about just being kind of good for one type of customer, or for one kind of being good for one colleague. It's about being the same and for everyone. So it was all about consistency, and kind of turning up and giving the same experience to everyone. So those are kind of two kind of real key kind of leadership philosophies that have stuck out to me from kind of two kind of leaders in my past.
That's very, very powerful stuff. Stuff that I've not even heard before. That's why I love these conversations that I have with my guests and stuff like that. Like the helicopter analogy, it's like you're in the fight, but you're not on the floor. You're not on the ground. You know what I mean? You're air support, aren't you? You know what I mean? You're on the machine gun going, giving out like pointers and stuff like that. So like, I love that, honestly. Like, it's back to that. It's back to that. That I don't know. Like that being a sniper and a spotter, innit? Like your employees are the sniper, and you're just there with the scope and the binoculars going right, turn left, turn right, move down. You know what I mean? You've got it on point. So I love that philosophy, what you're sharing there. It's really powerful stuff. So again, we've come to the end of the podcast now. But again, thank you to all the audience who are listening in. I hope you've got a lot from it. And you can find Rob on LinkedIn at Rob Paul. If you need anything, please feel free to get in touch with any of us, and we'll try our best to help you in any way we can. Thank you so much for listening in and tuning in. Again, Rob, you've been amazing. Thank you for being our guest on the show. And as always, tune in next time, and we'll have a chat next time with our other guests. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Take care and have an amazing day. Bye for now.